2.3 Fatigue and Recovery by Bobby Moore. During physical exercise, all athletes will feel fatigue in their muscles at some point during their career. When fatigue occurs, your muscles begin to feel heavy and tired. They can also start to cramp, which could be a result of a long duration of exercise or even a temperature increase. After a sporting event or intense training sessions, athletes can feel exhausted and dehydrated to the point where they will collapse as soon as they can, which is due to their energy stores being depleted. This could also account for our muscles feeling like they are burning because there is an increased level of acidity in the muscles. Due to physical exercise, the athletes may also feel lightheaded and dizzy because their body is struggling to keep up with the high oxygen demands. Fatiguing can also vary depending on the length and intensity of the activity. For example, short duration and high intensity, or long duration and low intensity. These affect the fatiguing rate and intensity because the rate at which lactic acid levels increase. This is called acidosis. Because the pH levels are then low and the lactic acid system becomes dominant, inhibiting oxygen. Certain sports such as the 100-metre sprint, shot put and 400-metre sprint will make the lactic acid levels increase much quicker than an 800-metre race and marathons. Because the short duration activities use up their ATP and PC systems much quicker due to a lack of oxygen, disabling these systems to resynthesize quick enough. The 100-metre sprint is included in the group of maximal intensity and short duration activities where the ATP and PC systems are dominant because they don't normally last longer than 10 seconds. Other sports are also included in the group such as shot put, javelin and long jump. ATP resynthesizes as much as it can during the 3 seconds. It lasts until it can not resynthesize anymore, which is where the PC system begins to take over and provides another 7 seconds of maximal intensity exercise. During the 100-metre sprint, the muscles will only fatigue once the ATP and PC systems are depleted, which is where they can no longer resynthesize, and this will result in the muscles stop contracting. This can, however, be avoided by taking creatine supplements because they contain phosphates which help to resynthesize ATP and PC. This is legal when performing in a professional environment because it does not enhance performance but aids it by prolonging the beginning of fatigue, so that the performance of the athlete isn't affected during the competition. However, with all this said, when performing the shot put, ATP is the only energy system being used because it is very short. This is due to the fact that once the athlete has thrown the ball, the muscle has enough time to fully resynthesize before the next throw. Therefore, the recovery time for this sport will be shorter than the 100-metre sprint. For a full replenishment of ATP and PC, it takes between 2 to 8 minutes. In addition to this, oxygen is needed for the systems to fully replenish. For example, oxygen is needed to stick the P back onto ADP, which is produced by ATP being used for energy. Athletes participate in different sports, for example, the 100-metre and 800-metre sprint. The recovery time for these two competitions are different because during an 800-metre run, the ATP and PC systems are depleted completely and the lactic acid system steps in. This therefore means more oxygen is required in order to fully resynthesize the muscle and recover. The stage at which ATP and PC are depleted is called EPOC, which stands for excess post-oxygen consumption. EPOC is the extra VO2 consumed or used by the resting levels, above the resting levels. With this said, to know whether or not an athlete is going into EPOC, you need to look out for an increase in breathing rate and tidal volume. The alactic fast recovery only takes roughly 2 to 3 minutes, and is what your body uses after a 100-meter sprint, and restores ATP and PC energy stores. It also saturates myoglobin and hemoglobin with oxygen, which is important because it is then taken to the mitochondria in the muscle, where exercise begins again. ATP takes roughly 30 seconds for 50% of it to resynthesize, 1 minute for 75%, and 3 minutes for 100%. The 400-meter sprint and 800-meter sprint is a moderate intensity and moderate duration exercise, where the ATP is used for 3 seconds until depletion. Then the PC system will be used for roughly 7 seconds until depletion. And finally, the lactic acid system will be used to resynthesize ATP in order for them to carry on the race. This is because they are anaerobic. However, the waste products for this are heat, ATP, and PC stores. It also includes half of the glycogen stores occurs. The final waste product is the lactic acid, which causes the acidity levels to increase, meaning that the enzymes aren't able to break down glucose, which is called acidosis. This is the increase in acidity in the blood and tissues. Due to a high acidity level, the electric impulses that release energy from the energy stores is slowed down, which reduces the rate at which the muscles contract. After a moderate intensity and moderate duration exercise or activity, athletes may feel a burning sensation in their muscles. This is due to a build-up of hydrogen ions on the picture. On the picture at the bottom right, you can see OBLA, which stands for onset of blood lactate accumulation, which is the title of the part in any activity where lactic acid begins to build up in the muscles. However, the average lactate level is 4 millimoles. This therefore means that OBLA will only occur after this amount is reached. The intensity and duration of the activity can affect this because it can increase, and because as an activity increases, so will the amount of lactate in the muscle, causing fatigue. The average resting lactate levels are around 0.8 millimoles and 1.5 millimoles. The lactic acid system is the dominant system during the 800-meter run. This means that the athletes running the 800-meter event will have a higher OBLA than the athlete who is running the 400-meter. An important part after the race is recovery. This is because the muscles need to be stretched out and given enough oxygen to remove the lactic acid in the muscles to prevent DOMS, which is delayed onset muscle soreness, which are muscle fibre tears, and can be between 24 and 48 hours after physical activity, or muscle soreness later on. A set of light activity and passive stretching, such as swimming, is a good way to keep the blood pumping in order to remove the lactic acid out of the blood. Athletes may induce in a soda loading, which is where they have a high amount of sodium carbonate to neutralize the acidity before the race, which can cause side effects such as vomiting and diarrhea. The 400-meter and 800-meter events have a longer recovery time than that 100-meter sprint and shot put because they are moderate intensity and moderate duration, which means that the athlete's oxygen deficit will be higher than a 100-meter sprint due to a long duration of the activity. Therefore, the athlete goes for longer without oxygen being needed. This means that more oxygen is needed for oxidization to occur. This is where oxygen is used to break down lactic acid, which is higher than a 100-meter sprinter, because the body is working anaerobically for longer, increasing the build-up of lactic acid. This is similar to EPOC because oxygen is needed for recovery. The body needs oxygen to carry out certain metabolic demands, such as breathing rate and heart rate. The oxygen is also needed to ensure that muscle contractions are still going on to ensure that the body gets rid of lactic acid efficiently. This is also where alactic fast recovery and lactacid slow recovery are both used after the run.